Now
Mic
you're
check.
okay. Hey, I hear you. And Skip.
Oh yeah, he's in here.
What's up,
I
Skippers?
I always forget to do like join with computer audio or test microphone. I went with computer audio.
Yeah, that's the right one.
All right. So are we gonna do this then without him?
Yeah, I mean we got to make a podcast. We got to make them dollars, Mike.
Yeah, we gotta make that fucking money, dude.
All right, I'm recording now.
Oh, okay.
I just started it. That last horrible racist thing you just said wasn't on the recording.
All right. All right. Here we go. Mic check 1 2 3. Okay, I'm on 2.
Okay, let's do a clap. I was joking, by the way. He didn't say something horribly racist. I thought he would argue that more than he did instead of just going with it.
No, yeah, it's fine. I'm like processing a million things right now. So yeah.
Oh, let's clap on 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, that's for
Good
your
enough,
audio.
man. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm tired, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know how long you want to be on here, but I was going to ask you, how was your
7
trip?
minutes. 7 minutes. 7 minutes.
Yeah.
It was good. I hate video people. So for we usually record these in the daytime. It's after 8 o'clock at night on Wednesday. I just got back from Texas. Didn't sleep for shit. Got woke up to a fire alarm at the hotel at midnight last night.
Ooh, that's got to be a fun one.
Mm-hmm. And suddenly I remember back to my days as a firefighter being pissed off at all the guests who were bitching about having to leave their room in the middle of the night when there was an alarm. Until I was the guest. I'm like, this is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what did it end up being?
I don't know. Got out of the room, started going, then they're like, oh, everything's fine. I'm like, okay, I went back to bed.
Mm.
I didn't sleep for shit the last night. I think I had some bad Mexican food the first night I got there, which is bad. Like after flying, and then like I was like kind of sick.
Yeah.
Not like coffee, cola, and I was like even like looking up like my symptoms. Like, could this be COVID? Holy shit! And it was
Oh,
like
no.
it takes at least 2 days for COVID symptoms to present, and I got off the plane like 4 hours before that. So I just had some bad food or something. But so it was a rough trip. It was rough.
Did you accomplish everything you set out to do?
Yeah, to an extent. I'll talk about it in the main episode on Sunday, some of it, but yeah, it didn't get as much done as we wanted to. Ran into some issues at the DA's off or at the clerk's office. It was weird. Like we went to view all the exhibits. Oh, all the exhibits and the evidence.
No kidding. That wasn't bad.
And they were like, "You're not allowed to touch it." I'm like, anything? So like they had like stacks of papers and pictures, and we're like,
Okay.
we can't flip through those. Like I get like the physical evidence stuff that could be like DNA tested later, but like any other time, well, you remember you and I did it in Houston. Put your rubber gloves on and you can thumb through stuff.
Yeah.
We had a dude that was there like every piece of paper, like, want to see this? Want to see this? Want to see this? Want to see this? Like, there's a stack of checks this big. Like every check that the Courtneys ever wrote to Deb over the course of like 25 years was in a stack. How about this?
Well, so is that a COVID thing or was that already in place before
No,
COVID?
it's just their policy. So then, and we couldn't take any pictures of anything or get copies of anything unless we got a judge's order. So Allison had to call Mike Ware and have somebody in the office quick file a motion with a judge to give us permission to like get copies, which came through like late yesterday. So after I got to the airport, Allison was going back to get copies of stuff because that got signed. But then, yeah, I mean, we visited some places. I was sick as shit yesterday, so like it was rough. We
Yeah.
kind of pulled the plug later in the day. Went back into the hotel and I laid and stared at the ceiling for a while. But fun. Flying on an airplane,
cool, man.
Yeah, flying on an airplane is super fun right now because you like what's weird is like in Texas they take because Texas is bad right now, so they literally like every building you walk into they take your temperature. They have one of those things they like shoot at your forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Mask on, take your temperature. Everybody that walks in, they're turning people away like, sorry, your temp's over 99. You got to go. You can't come in. But like they don't do it at the airport. Airport, you just walk right in, wear your mask. And then you get on the plane and like we're wearing these masks and like, okay. This makes sense. Everybody on the plane wearing masks. Nobody's wearing like an N95. Nobody's wearing a mask that will like protect something from coming into their lungs. Only the stuff that protects stuff from coming out. And within 10 minutes of the flight, every single human being on the flight at some point had taken their mask down because you can take them down to eat or drink or anything. So they all have their masks on. Then it's like, oh, they pull it down, take a drink or eat some M&Ms or like people were like, I think people were like eating snacks. They like brought snacks on board and drinks just so they didn't have to have their mask on for 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah,
It's like,
that
oh,
would make sense.
if I open these M&Ms, then I can take my mask down and eat my M&Ms one at a time.
Right.
Just sitting there is like, this is whole like I like the mask thing makes sense, but like it's not working. And if anybody in this plane is sick, it's already gone through the whole fucking plane immediately because everybody
Hmm.
had their shit down. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is my chance to get COVID. See what this stuff's really all about.
Oh my God. I got to be honest with you. I got to be honest with you. This is terrible news. This is
Right?
terrible news.
You'll be working from home for the next 14 days.
It's just terrible news. We've been doing so good, man.
Yeah.
You're the only person I interact with.
Yeah, right. The
Yes.
flight out there was like empty. Like I was
Oh
sitting
yeah.
up front. There's me and one other dude up there. It's small plane. It's a little plane that makes that trip. And there's probably
Right.
20 people in the back. Everybody spread out. It was nice. On the way back, it was a full flight, which is weird because the flight there to Dallas is a major hub for American. So most
Yeah.
people are
Right.
flying there to catch a plane to fly somewhere else. But coming back, like it's a little bitty South Bend. Like that's people's final destination. I was just like, why are there so many people going to South Bend from Dallas right now? There's a lot.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it was cool. Speaking of hanging out, we had a nice little time on Sunday before we left.
You and I.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a good time. It
Remember?
was great, man.
Was Aaron concerned
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
rolled
There's
into the
not.
house at 1 a.m?
No, she was fine with it. I got a little confused there because I thought that was during the week, and it was definitely on Sunday.
It
So
was
yeah.
on Sunday. Mike and I went fishing in the river, and I've never really taken my little fishing boat very far with the motor. Usually, we just get on a little lake and tootle around. And usually, when you go on the river, my rule is always we drive the motor upstream and fish. That way, if there's an issue, we can always get back, drift back down to the launch. But we decided to go the other way this time and went downstream, long ways. Started going back upstream, ran out of gas.
Ran out of gas.
At midnight.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah, and then we had to ride upstream against the current with a little electric trolling motor, which took, I don't know, an hour to go 200 yards. It's
Mm-hmm.
good time though. We held it together.
Oh yeah, we did. And
Threw some
we
lines
just
in the water.
kept coming up with contingency plans, man.
That's right. You wanted to beach the boat, beach it,
Beach,
leave it.
beach it. Yeah, I did. Yeah, just trying to think ahead, man.
That's right. Oh, did a little shooting, got ready for my first light stuff came in. It was sitting at the door waiting for me when I got home today. My my long J's and my coat and pants ready
Okay.
for Wyoming.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Mikey put a shot in a target in the kill zone at 245 yards. A group like that,
Yeah, no big deal.
crack shot.
Yeah,
Killer.
that's right. Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
killer.
I got ice in my veins.
Oh, we're gonna have to get started like video, folks. I'm sorry. I really want there's funny stories to tell, and we were kind of hoping Zach was here, so I was
Vibes
so
are all wrong. The vibes are all wrong tonight.
so we could tell our stories to Zach and he could react to them. But
I'm just
Zach
ready. Sorry,
what'd you say?
I'm just ready to crack a beer, man. To be honest with you.
I've been drinking all day on the plane. I got to the Admirals Club at 10 in the morning this morning and had a couple of bourbon and ginger ales. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
I got on the plane, had a couple of bourbon and ginger ales, and then went out to Whiskey D's for dinner when we got back with Becky and had myself a nice glass of bourbon. So
Oh God.
ready for bed. Body's
Okay.
ready for
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
Tired.
All right.
It's probably too dark to see my eyes, but they have big circles under them. I'm tired.
You got some bags.
Yeah. But yeah, so Zach booted up his computer and it had a question mark on it, which was concerning. Like the computer was confused. by whatever he was trying to do, turn it on. And so he said he has to reinstall his operating system. To which we said, we'll see you next week because we're tired. I'm tired. I said, I'll see you next week.
I was looking for a really good emoji or GIF to send that articulated what are we gonna do, and I got a really good one that had Chris Rock on it, but then you texted me before I could send it off.
Oh, well, you should have sent it. You should have found something Star Wars to send him. You know, he likes to send those Star Wars gifts.
That's Zach's thing, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that is his thing. All right, dude.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, dude. We didn't have. We could, if it's just you and me, we could do this tomorrow morning.
Yeah, why aren't we doing it tomorrow?
Why are we doing this right now?
We're already here. We're gonna do 25 minutes and knock this fucking thing out. Here we go.
Okay, here we go.
You almost got me though. You almost got me.
I was gonna text you earlier, but it's all right. It's all right. Let's do it.
If you'd have texted me that a little while ago, I'd have been all over it. But now I've already set all this shit up and got all this going on.
Knock it out. Yeah.
Okay. Woosah. Here we go. I'm gonna give you a little clickety clack. All right, 33 seconds of silence. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Truth and Justice. This is your Friday follow-up episode for season 8, episode 10. Sorry, I'm a little shaky this week. I just got off a plane. I've been traveling all week. It's nighttime. Mike and I are recording. We don't have Zach with us today. He was having computer difficulties. We're recording this via Zoom, but we're gonna try to do our best. I am joined by Mike via Zoom. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, everybody.
So we're going to try to keep this short and sweet, selfishly, because I am exhausted, did not sleep well on my trip, and have been traveling for 3 days straight. So this week we heard from Dr. Maria, a.k.a. Margarita Abelos. And we got a little bit more information about Emilio Villagomez Gutierrez. So you guys have a lot of questions. We're going to get right into them and try to get right through this.
Okay.
Just let them know. I just want
a little negativity. Bring a little negativity.
Bob's bummed out.
All right. We'll smash it.
All right.
Okay, start it up. Okay, Bob, we got a lot of questions from social media this week. Our first question comes from listener Susan. Our first question comes from listener Sarah. Sarah writes, much has been made about Dr. Abelos. Much has been made about Dr. Abelos' comment that when she saw the police in her neighborhood, she blurted out, quote, "You're here about my dead neighbors." What do you make of this?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Mike edited the interview too, and so he heard some. You didn't hear everything because I had some conversations with her off the air too, but it was interesting. She, a couple people on the fan page asked, why didn't you ask the follow-up question? Like, how did you know? I thought I did on the interview, but maybe I didn't. Maybe that was off the air. But the answer was she didn't know. She doesn't know how she knew. And she's, she said, she just woke up. She was tired. She was confused. She said she thought she saw the lights, the flashlights outside, and so she was thinking it was Halloween, which was 2 days before. She thought was the day before or whatever. Yeah, so she really doesn't have an answer other than she, and then in our other conversation, she was even like, I felt like I knew like what happened to them, like they had been beaten and stuff, but then also that she's like, but she doesn't know now over all these years and being at the trial and seeing all the news media and everything on it, how much of that information was shaped just from things just coming into her brain since that time, new memories being created by new information, and having a difficult time distinguishing between what she knew that day and what she knows now. Even so at the trial, when she went to the trial, she kept telling them, and I posted the trial transcripts so you can look at them. But and a few people made something out of the fact that she conceded that it could have been a woman in the backyard. But if you read the transcripts, what she's the state is trying to, obviously it's their job, they're trying to convict a woman. And they have this eyewitness the defense puts on that sees a man in the backyard. So they're trying to make it seem as though she's unsure. And to me, when I read the doctor's testimony, she was being very honest. When she just kept saying, it's been a year. What I said then was accurate. I know it was fresh in my mind. It was hours old. But now I don't know. And then, they said, well, don't you think it could have been a woman? Maybe it could have been a woman. She can see it. I don't know. Maybe it could have been a woman, but then again, refers back to what I said back then, which I imagine was a difficult position for her because she had, she gave them her description, doesn't hear from the police for 5 months. They come back and they show her pictures of women, and you heard her on our interview explain that the officers was, as she said, I think she said she didn't want to use the word coaching or whatever, but basically they kept pushing her, showing her photos of women, saying, "Aren't you sure it could have been a woman? It could have been a woman. Are you sure it wasn't a woman?" And then she goes to trial and finds out the person they arrested and they're trying to convict is a woman. That's got to be a difficult position to be in. So I think she was being honest when she said, a year later, okay, now maybe my memory's not as sharp. Maybe it was a woman, but you should really refer back to what I said that day. I know what I said that day was accurate.
All right, this one's from Christy. You've talked about in the past how you talk to people regarding their innocence. If you're guilty, you don't want me taking your case. Have you had this conversation with Deborah, or do you plan to have a version of it now that you're writing to her?
Well, I mean, it would be kind of late for that now, for me to say that to her now. But no, I didn't have that with Deb. But the reason for that is the case was brought to me by Allison, the attorney that's working on her case. And so and because of the media and interview issues in that medical unit she's in, just like Sandy Melgar, it's not real convenient for me to talk to her. Um, it gets really a tough line between, oh, we're just friends having a conversation, but I'm also reporting on the case. Could be construed as an interview. So, in this case, Allison went to her before we took the case. After they asked for our help on it, Allison went down there and sat with her and told her, this is the idea she has. She wants me to do it and to get her blessing. And Allison explained all of that stuff to her. That this guy's not coming in as your advocate. He's coming in as an advocate for the truth. He's going to dig to the bottom of it and find the truth, hopefully, and let her know that, explain to her that my job is to find the truth, to figure out if she is innocent or guilty. So Allison had that conversation with her. I have not.
Andrew says, in one of Dr. Abelos' statements, she mentioned that she thought the man might have had something to do with the renovations the Courtneys were having done. She didn't mention this at all when she spoke to you. I think this could be significant because this could be significant because this could then be a potential reason someone would have because this would then be a potential reason why someone would have access to the property. Is this something you could follow up on with her? What renovations she was talking about and what they had taking place?
Yeah, I mean, I have her number. I can text her and ask her some follow-up questions. That one, my opinion on it was she got that information from somewhere, right? So probably she said she was watching the news all the time. If you go back to the beginning of the interview, she had never met the Courtneys. She didn't even know their names. She just knew they were in the backyard. So my thoughts on it at the time were, there's no way she could know, unless she just saw workers in the backyard at some point, because I think they had a bathroom remodeled. But she wouldn't have had a conversation with the Courtneys to know that they had some contractor working. What we do know is that they did have that. Terry Hall was his name, a contractor, come to give him a quote, but he had never given them a quote. And there was no other evidence that there was anybody else supposed to be working on the house. So either I think she had just seen when they were having renovations done at some point, previous, had seen somebody doing work in the backyard, although I don't think they did any work in the backyard, unless they had tools or something back there. Or she just kind of picked up on that, just like I was talking about with the previous question. She had picked up on that over time from watching the media around the case.
Chris says, in the detective notes, when Marie's being shown the photo spread, a note off to the side makes it sound like the police asked her if she had ever lied to the police and whether she was being treated for an illness. Are those standard questions in these circumstances?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think and there's that, and there's another thing another listener Jenny Decker, I think, had brought up on the fan page that I want to follow up with Maria. One was that they asked her about an illness, and I hadn't caught that. And also, I should point out, speaking of me being kind of tired right now, as far as my interview skills, that interview, I don't think I said this on the podcast, but I recorded that at 12:30 a.m. I had actually been in bed. I was trying to set up. I'd spoke with her early in the day. She was supposed to get a hold of me later that evening. She lives in California. It's a 3-hour time difference. I went to bed at 11, and at 12:30 she called me and is like, "I can do the interview now." So it was literally like, wake up, wipe the sleep out of my eyes, and run out and do it. But so anyway, that would be worth following up on. I mean, I got the impression from her and just from reading the report that Hardy was maybe a little frustrated based on the fact that he showed her pictures of women when she described a man, and then as she said that he was, he kept kind of trying to coax her or ask her that, could it have been a woman, that he was really trying to get her, seemed like, to pick a woman out of that lineup. But as far as the illness, I don't know. And then there's another thing that Jenny had noted that was in one of the statements or the notes. I think Dr. Abelos had said something about that she has experience being experience with the police, both as a victim and as a witness when she lived in Arizona. So I do want to follow up on that too. I don't know I assume that she was either a victim or a witness to a crime and had interactions with the police, and she was just explaining to him. So I kind of like, I know how this goes, but that's something I want to follow up on with her too.
Okay, that was the next question, so I'm going to skip it.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. Liz says, I miss what made the police think that Dr. Abelos and her boyfriend were suspicious enough to handcuff.
Yeah, from what she said, and then reading the reports, I think it was a combination of the fact that when she saw the police coming, she was getting in her car to drive away, which I think they perceived as like she was fleeing. And then also the fact that she said, you're here about my dead neighbor. Is that the way she's just described it? The reason they put him in handcuffs was because they hadn't told anybody that there had been a murder, and the first thing she says to him is, "You're here about my dead neighbor." So it was like, why do you know that they're dead? And the fact that you're getting in your car when we're coming up. So I think they look suspicious, and that's why they put him in handcuffs.
Ashley says, the drapes are all closed in the crime scene photos. Were these closed when the officers arrived for the welfare check, or did the officers close them? Also, did the Courtneys usually have them open during the day?
I don't know about them having them open during the day. That was when we first started with this case. One of the first things I want to do was try to get a hold of Mabel and Joe Szabo across the street and ask them that question, but then they've passed on. So that's not an option for us anymore. But yes, they were closed when the officers got there. It was noted in either Galusha or Gonzalez or both of their reports that when they got on the scene and walked around the house, all of the drapes or blinds or curtains were closed.
Isabel says, you mentioned in a previous follow-up so that there may be some evidence of prior threats made against Lloyd. Is there more information about these threats is there any more information about these threats that we might be getting into?
Yeah, there is. As a matter of fact, that's something that we're going to be covering. It's going to be kind of a hodgepodge. We have a special guest this Sunday, and then I've got some other things that I want to cover, and that's one of them. I was able to find in the files. If anybody knows, when you look at the detective's notes, Hardy's notes begin on like the 7th of November, but I found in another file more notes that went from like the day of the murder up to that point. And then I've been still steadily reviewing more and more and more of the documents that we have, and did come across some of the information about the threats made to Lloyd. So we'll be discussing some of that on Sunday, I think.
Alexis says, I believe the thermostat in the Courtney's house was set to 55 degrees. I don't know if the house was actually this cold. So would it affect the lividity timeline that you've previously presented?
As far as the lividity timeline, we're going to get more information on that Sunday. That's our special guest. We have an expert ME that's come in to talk about lividity. But as far as the cold temperature affecting lividity, My opinion is no, because so when we say there's a range, the range is from say 4 to 10 hours up to maybe 6 to 12 hours as far as how long it takes for lividity to fix. In that range, the reason there's such a wide range are because of variables like temperature, right? So say if it's hotter, the lividity fixes faster. Then lividity would probably fix around 6 hours. And if it's colder, it's slower, and that might take 12 hours. But that's why that range is there. As far as what the temperature actually was, that's a puzzling one. Somebody noticed, one of the listeners on the page, I don't remember the name of the person that found it, but it was in one of the notes that we posted. Somebody wrote the thermostat was in the hallway was set to 55 degrees, which is like all the way off or all the way down, depending on the thermostat. Listener Don McElhaney looked at the pictures from the crime scene and seems to have narrowed down the model of Honeywell thermostat, and it looks like it's a type that has like the slider bar on the bottom, and then one side will have like mode and fan, and then there's an off switch on the side. So, but that's again is kind of a frustrating part of some lack of documentation or photographs. Because the slider was on 55 doesn't mean the air conditioner was even on. And I thought about it. My wife and I went out to dinner. What day was it? Saturday, before we both left for our trips. And I was having dinner, and I went back to use the restroom. And the funny thing is, I walked out, and there's the exact same thermostat, or very similar thermostat, at the restaurant we're at. And I looked at it, and the thermostat was set all the way to 55, all the way to the left. But then it clearly was not 55 degrees anywhere near that room. And so it kind of got me thinking about it. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things. I doubt they had it set on 55 in a situation where the air was working properly and would get the house to 55. That's freezing cold. That's really cold to be inside your house. So I think some possibilities are that the air conditioner wasn't on. Maybe that's why the drapes were pulled. If you got a brick house, if you keep them, Mike, you remember the Papalardo house, the one of my houses you lived in, or the rental?
How could I forget, man?
Right. So in that house, it didn't have air conditioning. But do you remember in the summer, like if you kept the blinds pulled in that house, was it ever really hot or bad in there? This point's going nowhere.
No. I'll just no, I didn't.
No, I mean you can say whatever. We can even skip that. I seem to remember in my mind that house, like as long as you like kept the blinds pulled and stuff and kept the sun out, like they would stay relatively cool inside, unless it was extremely hot outside.
Yeah, when you said pulled, like I'm getting a little confused because pulled to you means closed and not letting sunlight in, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yes, but now I don't know how to word that. Going back to the conversation. So how do I pick that back up? Just say
so I had said, you remember the house, and you said, yeah, and I said, so in that house, it didn't get too bad. As long as you kept the blinds pulled, it didn't get too bad in there.
Right. Yeah. As long as they were shut, it wasn't too. Right. Yeah. As long as they were shut, it didn't get too hot.
Yeah, it seemed like it was. I remember when we were working on it. Doing the renovations. If it was 100 degrees outside, it would be hot in there. But on an 85-degree day, it stayed pretty cool. And that was not a brick house. Brick houses tend to be a little more have a little more insulation to them. So I don't think it's out of the question on an 87-degree day to have the blinds closed, to keep the sun out, and the air conditioner off, and that it would stay comfortable in there. That's possible. Or it could have been on and it was really that cold. Or it could have been, in a struggle down the hallway, or somebody rushing down the hallway could have bumped it, or an officer could have bumped it, through that process. There's a lot of variables. Again, another one of those things that if they just taken some pictures of it and properly documented. But I feel like if the detectives, if Officer Galusha opened the door, walked into the crime scene, and it was 55 degrees inside the house, a 30-degree variance from what it is outside, that I think I feel like, and it's anecdotal, whatever, it's just a guess. But to me, I feel like you would have noted it was very cold in the house, where nobody said anything like that. So long answer, and not a very good one, but I would say I doubt that it was actually that cold in there.
Kimberly says, has anyone interviewed the next door neighbor who was hanging the laundry when Dr. Abelos' dogs were barking? In the neighborhood canvas notes, it says no one was home.
No, but that's something That's a good. No, but that's a good idea. It's someone I hadn't thought of. I know that I was just there. I was just literally out on my trip, standing in that neighborhood, um, and so I know that house. I'm sure, obviously, not the same person living in there now. But I thought there was the police talked to one of the Courtney's neighbors at some point. Who, remember, they said that the daughter had come by, and they have like a housekeeper that comes by, and they talk to her and talk to. Well, they only have obviously two neighbors. One of them is the one right next to Dr. Abalos's house, because it's kind of the corner house. The street isn't. They're not like a perpendicular streets. They kind of make like a pie shape. Um, and so it goes Courtney's house, and then another house, and then Abalos's house is down the next street right behind them. Um, so I guess I always assumed that it was that neighbor they were talking to, but I'll have to check the address. Again. So I always assumed that the neighbor whose daughter was there and the housekeeper was there. I always thought it was that house, but I'll have to go back and verify the addresses. If not, it's somebody we should look up. I'll have to go back and verify the addresses, and if not, it's somebody we should definitely look up.
Julie says, is it possible to get a copy of the photo lineup that was shown to Dr. Julie says, is it possible to get a photo lineup of, sorry, man. Julie says, is it possible to get, Julie says, is it possible to get a, why?
Yes,
Why?
sir. All
Why?
right.
Copy of the photo lineup. All right. Julie says, is it possible to get a copy of the photo lineup that was shown to Dr. Abalos? This can usually access with a FOIA request.
I would love to. We have so in the files, and I'll get it posted for. I guess it should be up now. There's a photo lineup that contains Deb in it, and it's got initials on it. But when I looked at it, it's not. It's not the. I don't think it's the photo lineup that was shown to Abalos. They may have shown her the same one, but in this one, remember back in an earlier episode that there were a couple officers that were at the funeral, and said that they heard Deb like say, "I'm sorry, Daddy," or "I'm sorry" to her dad, and then talk to her mom's casket, and then they showed those officers a photo lineup so they could identify who it was that they saw. They identified, yes, it was Deborah Parenter that they saw at the casket. And the name's escaping me right now, but that officer's, I think Mike Brown is sticking in my head, but anyway, that officer's initials are on that photo card. But now I think that it would seem likely that that would be the same photo card that they would have shown Dr. Abalos, but I can't say for sure that that's what happened.
Joe says, the cut caller ID box keeps hanging me up. If Lloyd was killed first, why cut the cable in the bedroom? If the killer comes up upon Agnes and kills her, it would have to be cut after both murders. I don't get it.
I don't either. That's a really good observation, actually. Speaking of which, don't let me forget, Mike, when I'm done with this, there's another observation from a listener I want to talk about. Yeah, because so the caller ID box, and I got a good look at a photo of it at the district clerk's office this week. We'll be discussing probably Sunday. But it was like it was on the desk, which would be past Agnes. So which, as this listener says, the killer would have had to walk past Agnes to the desk to cut the box, or, which seems very unlikely, or after the killings cut it, or before the killings cut it. And there's reasons for both, and I would say that's another element that goes really against Deb. I think that the caller ID box, because of the fact that it seems that the thing that would make the most sense is that it was cut before the murders occurred. But then you got the one in the living room that's right there out where Lloyd was. That you would cut it right before he was there. I don't know, but it definitely is possible that the phone cords were cut prior to the murders. If that's the case, then I think that definitely points us towards Deb, because she was in the house. Or there's a possibility they were cut after the murders, and I guess so that no calls come in. I don't know what the purpose of that would be. Cutting them after the murders, or during. I don't know. The more I think about it, it definitely seems more likely that they were cut before. And if they were, then I think that's definitely a strike against Deb.
Lauren says, so if we're looking further into Emilio, I'm wondering if there's a potential family connection to the Courtneys. Oh, sorry. You had another observation from a listener that you wanted me to mention.
Oh. Yeah, you can leave it in just like that. Oh, right. It was discussed on the fan page. I should have wrote down the name. But somebody just made a very simplistic post, a very simple post, I should say, that made a lot of sense. And it was simply the fact that whether the note was printed, we're talking about the printer note from 2 episodes ago, but whether the note was printed on the Courtney's computer or it was printed on another computer, in either case, it was printed before the murders, which again seems simple, but it's almost kind of like a light bulb moment, right? So we didn't know until we saw the computer forensics that the only thing printed at the Courtney's house was at 10 in the morning before the murders. So now we know that. And if it wasn't printed there, it had to be printed somewhere else prior to. So just as we're working towards kind of a behavioral analysis and a profile of the scene, so now we know that it was premeditated, right? Somebody printed out that note, wrote that note out, printed it, either and did that and then brought it with them, or did it there in the house and then held on to it for an hour or two before the murders happened. So anyway, it was just, there's nothing real, something probably a lot of you already thought of, but it was just something that occurred to me that I thought, wow, that is a really, really good and simple observation.
Okay, now we can go back to that other question.
Okay.
Okay. Lawrence says, so if we're looking further into Emilio, I'm wondering if there's a potential family connection to the Courtneys.
Not that I see. Another thing, we're not gonna keep. For me, I'm not gonna keep harping on Emilio on the podcast. What we had to do is everything we do with everything else, right? We have questions and we seek out answers and we try to fill in as much gaps as we can. And Emilio was a big question, and we still have questions about him, but we've gotten as far. We got the bill of sale. We found out where he lived. We found out about the other robbery. Got a little bit of insight into how it took the difficulty in tracking him down. Now at this point, I'm going to continue looking to see if there's any kind of connection there. But it's like I think we know enough about him to know that if he was just a random stranger to the Courtneys because the note, that it couldn't have been him. So and I don't want to be in a situation where it's like, well, he's it's probably him unless he can prove he's not connected. It's the other way around. Like, as all we know is this dude was pulled over in the neighborhood, and that's all we know about him, and that's all we really need to know about him, unless we find there is some sort of family connection. Which again, that'll be work that's being done behind the scenes, but I'm not going to be going on and on about that process unless I find something that is of interest.
Amy says there was a lot of talk in the episode about the document that was typed and printed at 10 a.m. As in, where was that? As in, where was that document? It was typed and printed. Shouldn't it be in the house somewhere? But isn't it possible it was mailed? But isn't it possible that it was mailed, which accounts for its absence? That's all I could think about while listening to this episode.
That is possible. It's definitely possible that it was. If Lloyd typed something up, that he might have typed it and then stuck it in the mailbox, and that it wouldn't be in the house. It's also possible, as we said last week, that it's in the house, because again, we don't have a thorough documentation. We don't have many pictures. We don't have an inventory of the pieces of paper that are at the Courtney's house. Or could have been some of those printed out and then thrown away. Who knows? I actually have a theory about it, and I'm going to bring it up on Sunday. But for those of you that don't know, I found more pages of the computer forensics. So we had like the computer forensics report final summary. I found a lot of the data pages, but just like everything else, we have pages 1 through 6, and then page 9. Pages 7 and 8 are missing from that for some reason. But within that, I posted those on the website if you want to review them. They're Greek to me for the most part. So I put them up for anybody that really knows computers to look at, and a lot of listeners have. But within there, I think it was within there or another document that I found, I have a clue about what might have been printed. But before I let it out now, I want to fact check myself, especially right now this late at night, and my brain's not working quite right. But I will Sunday give you my theory about what I think may have been printed on the computer.
All right, and our last question comes from Brooke. Isn't it possible that this was a paid hit? And if so, wouldn't it be difficult to find the connection between Emilio, if he did, of course, do this, and the Courtneys?
I mean, in much the same way that Maria couldn't say at trial that it's, in much the same way that Maria kind of had to concede at trial to say that, I guess it could have been a woman, I would say that it could have been a hit. And what I mean by that is, I guess you can't say it's impossible, but in my opinion, it is extremely, highly improbable, almost completely improbable, in my opinion. They're just, other than ingress and egress going undetected. Even, and that's the case, by the way, even if it's not so much ingress, but even if it's Deb, the egress, getting out of there in the middle of that neighborhood without anybody knowing you just committed a brutal, bloody double homicide takes some skill. Cleaning up the blood and walking out, not looking nervous, not being seen by anybody when you're leaving. Because if Deb did it, I'll say this: it seems like from the timeline that if Deb did it, she would have had to have left and came back later. Because I just don't think if she's gone by noon, that timeline issue is a big hanger. This whole I'm rambling right now, but as I'm just kind of thinking out loud and processing a lot of what I've seen in the last few days, it's just this case is just very, very. I keep saying it's so complex, but it's complex, and it's fascinating, and I want to get to the bottom of it, because things will come up like we just discussed today, a few minutes ago, the caller ID box. It's like, when you think about that, because of its location, almost seems like it makes more sense that it was cut before the murders. If it was cut before the murders, then that points towards Deb. But then you look at the timeline, just the stuff we know, just the stuff the state concedes. One of the things I'm hoping to get from the district clerk's office, I'm waiting for Allison to get back with me with copies of what we saw, is they had a big board up with the timeline, and they show, that 11:19, Agnes is shutting the computer off, and the computer's being shut off with a soft shutdown, and at noon, they write on their timeline, Deb's gone by noon. So and then that's beyond all the other timing issues we have that we're dealing with alibi and things. But so I look at that and it's like, man, she couldn't have been there. But then it's like, but it kind of looks like she was there. Anyway, back to the question as I'm rambling on as we close this episode out, and I'm ready for Betty Bye. There's no markers other than the ingress and egress of this being a professional hit. I mean, people keep saying they didn't bring a weapon with them. I disagree. I think they brought a knife. I think whoever killed him brought a knife. I'm certain. I've seen the knife now with my own eyes, inches from my face. That's not the knife that killed them. I'm certain of that. The one that was stuck in Lloyd's leg. But other than that, the frying pans and so being so ineffective with the attacks and with the stabbings and the cuttings, it just has nothing about it marks, hitman. But then again, just because somebody, I'm really thinking out loud. I want to apologize for listeners, for all of you guys, by the way, that I'm so scatterbrained right now. I'm just literally exhausted. But, having said all that, just because somebody is a hired hit person doesn't mean that they're John Gotti.
Doesn't mean that they're competent.
Right. I mean, and if you watch the Tiger King, Carol, the guy that Joe Exotic was hiring to kill Carol Baskins, that would technically be a paid hitman, not exactly an assassin.
Right.
So if somebody paid someone to do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be very skilled in what they're doing. They just have to be as a matter of fact, I would think most people don't know how to get a hold of that guy. if I wanted to have something like that done, I wouldn't know how to get a hold of a professional hitman, but I got a couple buddies that might do something like that, if you paid him enough. Joking. Dr. I'm going to cut that out. He's right there. He's right there. That guy. He can shoot a target at 245 yards.
I mean, what can I say, man?
Yeah,
ice in my veins.
Yeah, let me cut that back too. I mean, I know some people that maybe kind of shifty like that, might do something like that, but I wouldn't know how to get a hold of a professional hitman. So that's just an idea that I think that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking along those lines. But again, I come back to the note. The note to me almost says that this was a premeditated assault and not a murder. Not a premeditated murder is what I mean. And the reason for that is because the note is written to Lloyd. Who writes a note to a dead man if you knew they were going to be dead? It's definitely not. There's a couple things, and we've talked about this before with the note. Either the note is just 100% a forensic countermeasure intended to point the police in a different direction. Because again, you don't write the note to a dead person. So the purpose of displaying the note is not for the person who you just killed. The purpose of displaying it is for when the police find it so they see it and read it. So that all the way, that's forensic countermeasure. The only way that I would say it's not 100% a forensic countermeasure is if it was something along the lines of somebody coming in for revenge. We talked about this before, like maybe they were going to come in and attack Lloyd's wife. Maybe they thought he wasn't home and they were going to attack her, or they were going to beat him up and rough him up a little bit. And it was premeditated. They wrote the note as a big FU when the assault was over, but they weren't planning on killing them because again, the note's written to Lloyd. But even with that, then displaying it on him later, I mean, who knows what runs through somebody's head. These are things people have mentioned. Jim Clemente. I want to try to get Jim in on this, but I know Jim well enough to know that it's too early for him to come in and do a profile on this yet, because we have too many unanswered questions. He's going to ask me questions in order for him to do the profile that I don't have the answers to yet. So we're going to get to all of that. And with that, Mike, you said that was the last question.
That's it, Bob.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna call it a night. We're gonna call it an episode. Thank you guys, Mike. I'm sure we'll make this sound smoother than it was, and we'll talk to you guys on Sunday.
Thanks, everybody.
There it is.
That's it.
Made another podcast, Mike.
That's it, Bob. Piece of cake.
It's the second worst follow-up ever.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
All right, so I'm going to I'm gonna save my audio. Put that in the Dropbox for you, and you don't need to send me anything.
Perfect, man.
All right. Bye, video people. We love you.
See you guys.